Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And today I have a fellow podcast host on the show. So I want to introduce you to LaTasha Cooper. And her husband are the co-hosts of A Peace of Mind, which are conversations aimed to help the modern entrepreneur improve their mental health and well-being. And LaTasha is also an entrepreneur herself. So welcome to the show, LaTasha.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. This is going to be so fun.
I love interviewing podcast hosts because you know what it's all about. You know what it's like to interview people. And so today I wanted to talk with her about a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And that is going to be entrepreneurs' mental health. And I want to talk about it because it's something as entrepreneurs that we rarely recognize or even deal with. And I know one of the topics she's going to talk about today is burnout, or as she calls it, compassion fatigue. And you see this a lot in servant leaders. And I have been there. I didn't even realize the first couple of times that I burnt myself out, that I was burnt out. I couldn't understand it. And, finally I was able to learn what burnout was. And now I start to recognize when I'm heading down that direction, I don't let myself get there. And so that's going to be one of today's really important topics. But first of all, LaTasha, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your story?
So I am here in California, so I am not in Canada, which is amazing that we were able to connect. I'm so grateful for the connection. And I have been an entrepreneur alongside my husband for over 10 years.
Wow.
However, I wouldn't have always said that. And so my husband and I were both educators working in the K through 12 system. Him starting off as a teacher and then moving up to a principal and then soon enough a district manager. And then myself starting off as an admissions counselor and then moving into the role of school psychologist. And we have always been very community oriented and have always wanted to give back, henceforth the education, which is such an honorable field, and I absolutely enjoy it. However, we wanted to do something on a bigger scale. And from there, my husband found the field of financial services. So we are in the life insurance industry, which is also very honorable. And we've been able to help other people become very successful in that industry. And now, after working with so many people, we've been able to really see that there is a stigma associated with mental health. And the fact that in the entrepreneur space, there can be different things that we are experiencing that can be obstacles if we don't get them taken care of. With getting them taken care of, they actually can be assets. Because
I so agree.
the role of an entrepreneur is to be a problem solver and to be able to actually add to the body of work within our society and to contribute. But if we have that brain fog that sometimes happens because of the fatigue, then we definitely are not working at our optimum level, which is what our mission is to be able to make sure that entrepreneurs have the ability to work at the optimal level, because entrepreneurs are so critical to today's world.
Oh, I so agree.
And I'm a mom of two boys, so I'm a boy mom. I think that's important for all of my mompreneurs out there, learning how to balance both. They are young adults, so I am not in that toddler, era anymore. However, I do remember what it was like with having to run a business and having the two young kids. And there were times I felt like I had one on one hip and one on the other hip and trying to chase after my husband on this entrepreneurial journey and not realizing that I was on it with him. And he always said, "Babe, I didn't look and you were behind me." He said, "You were always right next to me." And so that was really the beginning of me opening up and realizing that I've been an entrepreneur just as long as he has.
Yeah, I'm just a little further down the road than you are. I'm a nanapreneur. So
I love it.
and like you, I've been an entrepreneur a long time. My kids grew up with me being an entrepreneur. And so, I have a heart for mompreneurs because I remember what it was like. And, I was a mompreneur before they ever came up with mompreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I didn't always have that support in that community. And I'm so thankful that moms do have that community now. And,
Yes.
I'm in that interesting stage where, I have adult children, I have a grandbaby, but I also have aging parents. So, they say that sandwich generation. Well, man, that's what I feel like some days, that sandwich generation. But I love it. I love it. And I love the rewards of being a nana. My grandson just turned 1. He's rambunctious and all over the place and learning and growing. And I get the best part of all because I get to watch it happen and still sleep at night.
Exactly. I'm a great aunt. So I'm not a grandma, but I am a great auntie. And so I get a chance to share in the joy with my sister. And who better to share in the joy with?
So I know today you want to talk about entrepreneurs' mental health. So I'm going to let you loose for a few minutes. And I would love for you to focus in on burnout because we don't, as entrepreneurs, recognize it usually in the beginning. And it can have some really serious and long-lasting effects on yourself personally and professionally if you don't deal with it.
Right, right. Well, one of the things is that the narrative for entrepreneurship is the 100% grind, and sleep does not exist. And so even within my own industry, we nicknamed a team no sleep. And so literally that is the badge of honor. And that team was so excited about being nicknamed Team No Sleep. However, what I alluded to earlier is that we want to be the problem solvers.
Yes.
And yes, there are those times that you need to push yourself to the limits. And sometimes pushing yourself to the limits does mean that you may not sleep for a 24-hour period, but that cannot be the way that you operate 7 days a week. And
yes.
the narrative is that is how you operate 7 days a week. And so for me, I want to be able to change the narrative in that we are problem solvers, that we are creative, and that we're innovative, and that for those types of things to take place, you need to have that space for creativity. And you find that when you do take your nature walks, you find that when you do have meditation time, you do find that when you take part in yoga, when you take part in mindfulness, because talking about the compassion fatigue as entrepreneurs, because we are problem solvers, and many of us, especially in my particular industry in financial services, we are servant leaders. And we wholeheartedly want to make sure that our clients and our customers are taken into consideration. One thing that we talk a lot about is mission over commission. And so that is truly important. And so when you're giving, and you're not getting anything back, you're not filling back up that cup, that's when the fatigue starts to take place. The compassion is important. I want the compassion to stay there. So that part is central to who we are, and at the core of who we are as entrepreneurs, especially when you are a servant leader. However, the fatigue part is what is my heart, and that is what my concern is that I see entrepreneurs burning out. And it concerns me because America needs the entrepreneur, especially when you look at what's taking place currently with COVID-19 and coronavirus. It is going to take that scientist practitioner model to be able to come up with the solutions and to be able to come up with the way to actually endure throughout these seasons. But if we don't, if we're too tired and we're too burnt out and we're too stressed, then we are going to halt all of the problem solving that needs to take place.
You know, it's funny you talk about creativity, because a few years ago, I wrote a fun little book called 30 Productivity Hacks for the Busy Entrepreneur. And eventually I will get it up on Amazon. Right now, it's just something I give away with my courses. But one of the things I talk about, one of the ideas is take longer showers or not. And so the concept is that when you are creative, and entrepreneurs tend to be creative, you need to be able to give your brain down relaxing time. And so for me, a lot of the books I've written have been in the shower, because I was in there, I was relaxed,
Right.
I was just enjoying the, the kind of heat in that. And, all of a sudden these creative ideas come. So one thing I do is, unless I'm doing a lot of recording like I am today, I don't normally shower till mid-afternoon, because that's kind of my down lag time, right? I've been working for 8 hours already at that point. So I take a shower, it revives me, brings the creativity up. So I talk about the fact that showers are a great place to just relax and allow the creativity to flow. And I think another thing you mentioned that was really important is that short-term go for it is okay. But how can you give and how can you be at your best if you don't give yourself the best? If you don't take care of yourself. And as problem solvers, one of our blind spots is we don't see the problems that are happening within ourselves. We think we can just push through, but sometimes you have to stop and deal with stuff.
Yes. And one of the things that you need to deal with is how after you've gone through just the long-term effects of giving, but also there is a high level of adversity that you face as an entrepreneur. So one of the biggest things that you face is rejection.
Yes.
And the long-term effects of rejection, there are studies that actually talk about that rejection can feel the same level of pain as a physical injury.
Wow. Didn't know that.
And so we often don't realize that, because rejection is more on the internal side, and that is more of an emotional reaction that we begin to feel. And we don't realize that long-term effects of rejection, and that's going to happen in entrepreneurship. You're going to have a higher percentage of no's than you are yeses. And how do you manage through all of that and still be able to keep going? And that is also part of the fatigue as well. And being kind to yourself. So that's why for me, the key word is compassion. And oftentimes we're compassionate to others, but we're not compassionate towards ourselves. And we have to be able to begin to realize that we are worthy, especially as female entrepreneurs, that we are worthy of compassion, and that we are worthy of giving that compassion back to ourselves the same way that we output it to others. And paying attention, because it will show up. It will show up in the headaches, as I talked about, the brain fog. It will show up in tension in our neck and shoulders and our back. It will show up in gut issues in terms of having different reactions to different foods. It may also show up in a lack of appetite, or it may show up in an increased amount of appetite. And oftentimes just chemically what happens is we begin to go down the road of eating things that are not nutrients. And so we're ended up feeding ourselves things that are actually not very nutritious to our body. And we need fuel. And we think that the chips are the fuel, but figuring out the other types of nutrients that can fuel your creativity and fuel your innovation is highly critical. And I just think that entrepreneurs actually do not realize on that end of giving that compassion back to ourselves. And I think for men entrepreneurs, for some of our male, just getting in touch with that feeling is not masculine. And again, that narrative along that lines is as well. But they are facing rejection just as much as we are as female entrepreneurs. And for my husband and I, working as a couple, realizing that how he processes the rejection may be different than how I process the rejection.
Yes.
And working together to be able to support one another.
You know, one of the things I teach, you know, in becoming that authority in your niche is how to deal with rejection. And you talk about the narrative. And so one of the things I teach is how do you change that narrative of rejection so that it's actually not rejection?
Exactly.
Because that's what we, as new entrepreneurs, many times, that's what we think it is. When someone says no to us, you know, our internal narrative is I'm not good enough. They're rejecting me. I did not do a good enough job. And yet it's not really the case. And many times you could have done it perfectly. But, you know, if the person doesn't have the time and the money for your services, that has nothing to do with you. That has everything to do with them. And so I teach that, you know, no is not a rejection word.
Yes, it's not now.
Yeah. Or it's just simply a sorting word.
Mm-hmm.
You're asking a question and no helps you to sort out who gets your time now and who doesn't.
Correct.
Right? No,
yes, because our time is valuable.
Yeah. And no is so freeing. I mean, there have been times I've had people say no to me and then I was disappointed. And then I found out more about that person later and I'm like, oh, thank you, God, that they said no, right? Because sometimes no it can be a really positive thing because if that person's not right for you and your business and what you do, that no is the best word that they can give you, you know?
Right. And I think we have to think about exactly. And we have to think about the times that we have said no. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's helpful to put ourselves back into the shoes that we don't say yes to everything. And it's not healthy to say yes to everything. If we said yes to every product and service that was offered to us, can you imagine how many things we would have in our house that are unused? And probably many of the listeners, they may have been down that road where they did say yes to way too much.
Yeah.
And again, that's when the fatigue begins to take place because we do have to set healthy boundaries. And so I'm always okay with people letting me know what their boundary is because I value boundaries and I think that boundaries are healthy.
I do too. I want to switch over a little bit. Now, normally I would talk about your book and your writing journey, but because you're a fellow podcast host, I would love for you to talk a little bit about, you know, how did your podcast come to be and what does that journey look like for you?
So we are brand new to this journey and we have about 6 episodes that we have already done. And really the journey came from our experience as entrepreneurs and me being an educational psychologist in the K-12 system. Mm-hmm. And seeing all of the budding entrepreneurs, because one thing about an entrepreneur is that they don't fit into a mold. So inside the school system, we want the kids to sit down. We want them to walk in a straight line. And I can literally see so many of my budding entrepreneurs in a school system, but I also see the struggles that they go through and not realizing that who they are is actually a gift. And that's one of the things that I truly believe, that we do have our straight and narrow type of focuses. And there's a place for that. Yes. We need people who can be focused in that manner, but the people who are rambunctious, the people who have those thoughts racing through their minds, you know, at a rapid speed, the people who don't walk to the necessary tune to everyone else, those are the ones that really come up with so much, but they are ostracized many times in the school system. And then on the other side of working with entrepreneurs and people being very comfortable with me because I am an educational psychologist, to open up and talk about some of the manic episodes that they are having, some of the depression episodes that they have went through. And I realized that it was so important for us to begin to merge business and psychology, again, because I believe so much into entrepreneurship, and I believe in education, and I believe that there is a merging that needs to take place between business and psychology, so that way we can create stronger and more authentic entrepreneurs. Because I think sometimes that's the thing, is that there's that one piece that we are not sharing because it is not okay to share, because there's a stigma attached to it.
Oh, I so agree. I so agree.
So it has been actually well received. And so finding people to open up, and we had one guest that owns her own mental health gym in Los Angeles, California, more specific, Beverly Hills. And so she has shared her experiences of just getting down to the bare bottom, because she went through a divorce and some of the things that were associated with that. And out of that, sometimes some of our difficulties actually is what gives birth to our businesses.
True.
And that was her case. And then we've had other people who shared just their journey of coming to understanding that they were experiencing some mental health symptoms. And so that's really what our journey has been, is opening up that dialogue. And it has been very well received. People have been really open, as well as listening to it. The response that we've gotten on a personal level is like, I'm so glad that you're sharing, and we're getting more ability to be able to connect them with therapists, because I think that's the key, is helping them to realize that there are resources that you can do, especially now with teletherapy, because entrepreneurs are very busy. So they may not always have time to actually go to a physical office. And so there are many resources now that many therapists are offering the teletherapy. So you can get the support and the resources from your own home and in a private, confidential way, because that's the key. Many people don't want to be seen in a therapist office.
Well, that's true.
And so, but it's okay. I think in many ways that it's no different than when you are expecting. And I remember there was a time that my husband and I went to a doctor's appointment, and it just so happened that we were driving in the same car. And by the time I got to work, everyone was saying, congratulations, congratulations. And I was like, congratulations on what? Well, someone saw me at the doctor, and it happened to be the gynecologist. And I'm like, no, it was not an OB appointment. It was just a regular pap smear. and so it's okay for that. But why is it not okay if you're seen in an office of a psychiatrist, or you're seen in an office of a therapist? And oftentimes for entrepreneurs, they're very willing to go to life coaches, which I believe in life coaches, and I believe in business coaches, because I believe that navigation is helpful and useful. But why is it okay to do that? And it's not okay to go to a person who has the clinical training to help you resolve some of those traumas, because we have traumas. Yes. And oftentimes we don't realize that those are the obstacles that are interfering with our creativity.
You know what? It's so true. And I think we do have to reframe how we see it. We all need help at points, and it's okay to seek professional help in whatever area you need it in. And I think sometimes people go to life coaches because they don't want that stigma, but I think it just really has to change. So we're almost done here. Our time is almost up. Can you let people know how to get a hold of you and how to find your podcast?
So you can find our podcast on Spotify. You can also find it on YouTube. It is called Peace of Mind Podcast _ on Instagram. And then on YouTube, you just type in Peace of Mind Podcast along with Liberation Studios, and you will find it. I am also on Instagram at LaTasha Cooper 08. That Wonderful. Is how I can be found.
Well, thank you so much. This has been such an informative episode, and I'm so thankful that we had the happen chance to meet at an event, and now we get
Yes.
to do this podcast together. So,
Yes. And then when I come to Canada, I will have a person to visit.
yay!
So yes, thank you so much for having me on, and I really appreciate what you are doing on your podcast as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, LaTasha. And thank you, Authority Tribe, for listening. This has been another wonderful episode, and we will see you on the very next episode. Have a great day, everyone. Bye now.